Hey, welcome back to the Brownie Points podcast. Thank you for listening with us. Our first segment, we're going to get into that Browns loss. We'll give you our thoughts and our analysis. Then we're going to cover what's going on with Amari Cooper. We said we weren't going to talk about it in the season because we said this is not a story yet. He's a veteran. He's had a lot of 1,000-yard seasons. It's not a story until week 4 or 5. This continues, and it continued. Had another big drop. We'll get into that later, but it continued. So we're going to have a conversation. What's going on with Amari Cooper? Will he be traded? Who knows? We'll let you know what we think. Then we'll follow it up, of course, with our Brownie Points segment, which, again, if you are not a consistent listener, the Brownie Points segment is we award Brownie Points. It is our signature segment, and we award Brownie Points to the standout players on offense and to the standout players on defense. Sometimes we give out a lot, sometimes we give out a little. It's always 3, 2, or 1, and it's always based off of did you actually earn those Brownie Points. We don't just give out 3 because there's a space open. So you had to have actually earned those Brownie Points. Then we'll finish it up again, as always, with our look ahead segment previewing the Browns game versus the Commanders. The Commanders are on a bit of a hot streak. We thought this game, before the season started, you might have circled that as an easy dub, but that definitely does not look the case anymore. We'll get into that. We'll get you our thoughts and our analysis. At least we know a little bit more about the Commanders now than we did earlier on in the year, and we'll let you know what we think, and we'll give you our score predictions as usual. So, Levi, let's get into the Browns' disappointing loss to the Raiders. Coming into this game, not only did we think this was for sure going to be a win, right, or at least very, very likely, then we find out that Max Crosby's out and a couple of other guys are out. We're like, okay, they got to win this game. Because we thought maybe, the Raiders' defensive line might wreck the Browns' offensive line. And then we found out some guys are going to be out. We're like, okay, all right, you got to win this game. And somehow they don't.
Well, slight correction.
What happened?
We predicted the Browns to lose at the beginning of the week.
Yes, we predicted it, but a lot of people were saying, I was trying to cover, the general Browns fan sentiment from what I was able to discern from Twitter was that this was going to be a win, especially once they found out Max Crosby was out. Yes, we did predict they were going to lose. Unfortunately, we happened to be right, but why do you think they did lose that game? What happened? What went wrong? What's your analysis?
Yeah, there's a few things. And right now, it feels like we've gone backwards a year, almost like 2023 didn't happen, where we don't know how to win. That's what it felt like the last 2 games between the Giants and the Raiders. Like, we don't know how to win. It's that feeling. It's this isn't going right. This isn't going right. This isn't going right. This fluky thing. But we've actually seen this before with teams. And it's frustrating over and over and over again. At a certain point, it's because you don't know how to win. The belief isn't there.
It does feel like something's off about the mentality this year, doesn't it?
Yeah. And honestly, part of it, I wonder, is Watson. And I'm not blaming Watson in particular so much as I don't know if his teammates believe in him. And I think that gives a different matter of urgency. Yes, they're professionals. And it's not like they're purposefully coming out and saying, I'm not going to try. But when you believe in someone and you're following someone and you're all in with someone, there's a different level of effort. And I think that shows when you see interim head coaches that are popular come in. You'll see this crazy level of effort. And then that same guy the next year, it's not suddenly such a crazy level anymore.
Yeah, it's more just because of something different sometimes is all it takes. And they're like, all right, let's get a new shot.
And you can see that effort difference, right? And it's not an X's and O's difference. It's an effort difference. It's the extra juice. And you can see that with quarterbacks. And I do think one thing is partly, I don't believe Watson's been the leader of this team. I don't think he has that juice with the team. And maybe I'm wrong, and I hope I'm wrong, but personally, that's been my opinion, and I think that does affect things. I think you don't play quite as sharply. So I think that's part of it. But a big part of it is just they feel like they can't win. And once you feel like you can't win, you'll find that you can't win. And that's what keeps happening, right? It keeps being this thing and this move and this move. But, yeah, and I don't want to get too much into other segments, but one thing, and I won't get into the exact parts, but the fact that Amari Cooper hasn't been what he was has hurt this team so much because if you look back at last year, particularly at the beginning of the year when Watson was the quarterback, Amari Cooper was the engine of the offense. It wasn't just that he caught balls, it's that he got wide open. He would give you 2-3 huge plays where he would run a perfect route and be smack dab wide open. It was just an easy throw. And on top of that, he would make some additional crazy catches. So having him, it isn't just a matter of like, oh, we have someone else not playing as well. He's literally engine of the offense. Make it easy for the quarterback. When you're missing that, that's a huge drawback. At the same time, of course, we don't have Chubb either. So the mixture of the two, where you just don't have that engine of the offense, is really hurting because the defense just not being phenomenal. It's the defense being a step back. Yeah, they're not bad, but they're just not great. And that happens sometimes. They're just not that elite level. And when you're not that elite level, and then you also are missing that engine of the offense, I think that's the biggest combination, right? So it's partly the belief. It's partly belief, but that belief came from somewhere. It's from the losses. And that is basically based around losing your engine, right? You don't have the engine from the defense because it's not elite. and then you're missing your engine on offense, someone to help keep this going, because you don't have Amari Cooper playing to the level you want, and Nick Chubb's not playing. And Jerome Ford has his moments. He'll have a big explosive moment, but he's like a poor man Saquon Barkley. He does a lot of nothing, and then one big play.
Yeah, the loss here definitely felt multifaceted. Sometimes you can pinpoint a player, a play, a unit, a coach that you really feel like is the cause of what's going on. I feel like, yeah, it's multifaceted here. The team doesn't seem to have the same mentality they did last year. That's for sure. That's A. B, the defense isn't as elite as it was last year, and we're kind of at that point now. I think we can say that. I mean, they can still turn it around. But so far as the season has gone, this defense is not the same. Last year they were elite. This year they're pretty good. They have moments. They also have bad moments. The next thing is the offensive line, which is a disaster. That's not news to anybody, right? The offensive line has been horrific, and it really goes to show you how important coaching is. I mean, the loss of Bill Callahan has been immense. Bill Callahan last year, it's not like we didn't lose offensive linemen. It's just the new guys who came in were still always at least usually okay. I mean, James Hudson is always terrible because he's just trash. Let's be real here. But DeJuan Jones had one of the best rookie seasons for offensive linemen, maybe even the best rookie offensive lineman season last year. And this year he's been bad. And I would attribute that to the loss of Bill Callahan. Maybe that's wrong to say, but that's where I would attribute it to. And the offensive line has had a lot of struggles. They seem to have been able to turn whatever they have into something passable, right? Something competent. Maybe not elite all the time, but competent, no matter who is out there on offensive line. It doesn't seem like they can do that this year, and it's had a lot of impact. And one thing I won't stand for, we had a little bit of a back and forth about this, but I feel like that game from Deshaun Watson, and this is a bit bold, and I spent a little bit of time thinking about this because I said this, and I was like, oh, was it really? I do stand on this. I think that game from Deshaun Watson was the best game that he has had as a Cleveland Brown. I know it's a very strong, bold statement to make, but I really believe that. And I believe that for a few reasons. One being the consistency. I think he was good from the beginning all the way to the end. He was about the same Deshaun Watson from the beginning through to the end of that game. Versus in the past, where he might have at the end of the game, I say, okay, he played really well, or he had really good stats, or both. A lot of times that was from a great second half and a poor first half, or a great first half and a poor second half. We really hadn't seen him put together a full performance. This was the first time I felt like I saw a full performance from Deshaun Watson. And yeah, a lot of things went wrong in this game, but his stats do not tell the full story here. His stats look very underwhelming. They didn't look that spectacular. But if you watch that game, I really felt like Deshaun did everything that he could have done. I don't think if you inserted Patrick Mahomes into that offense, I don't think the result would have been any different. And I'm not saying that Deshaun Watson played to the same level that Patrick Mahomes played at, but I'm just saying if Patrick Mahomes in there, I think we would have had the same result. I think Deshaun Watson really did play that well. And I think more what I'm really trying to get at is that the mistakes, the things that went wrong in that game weren't his fault. We had that interception, and then the Raiders scored on that play. That dropped right into the hands of Amari Cooper, right? We don't need to relive that because it was very painful, but that was a perfect throw. That should have continued on to either become a field goal or become a touchdown for the Browns, and instead it became a touchdown for the Raiders. He also had that huge play to Amari Cooper, that 60, 80-yard touchdown, I remember what it was, that got called back for the very shaky holding penalty on Nick Harris. I think when they looked at it in slow-mo at the right angle, technically, yeah, it kind of was. But let's be real, it was pretty shaky, right? It's the kind of thing that the referee probably just called it because from his angle it looked worse than it really was. That was a huge play. Amari Cooper was open, but on Deshaun Watson's end, he was in the air when he was throwing that ball. It was a difficult throw to make. It was difficult to get that ball off, even though, like I said, Amari Cooper was wide open. But still, that's another big yardage play, touchdown play that had to come back. Then he had that perfect throw to Jerry Jeudy in the fourth quarter it was a great play from the Raiders defender. He came in at the last second and knocked the ball loose. Not really much Jerry Jeudy could do, not really anybody's fault, but a great throw from Deshaun Watson. He consistently made accurate throws down the field. He made plays with his legs. He had a lot of plays where he dropped back, and then as the pressure came in, he stepped up in the pocket and then was able to make a throw or make a play instead of just tucking and running, even from a clean pocket, which was a big issue before. I felt like he made consistently good decisions at the beginning, and he made consistently good decisions in the middle, and he made consistently good decisions at the end of that game, and I was actually really impressed, even though that final stat line was really nowhere near as good as some stat lines he has had, although he hasn't spectacular ones. This one definitely lagged behind the stat line category, but when I watched that game for me, and I think if you go back and you watch that film from that game, I think Deshaun Watson's going to look a lot better than the stats showed. So I don't think that it's his fault about what happened in that game. I really feel like he did everything he could. But to speak to what you were saying, I think the offensive line, something's up with the mentality in that defense, and then a couple of those bonehead plays just ruined it, right? That pick from Amari Cooper, the missed extra point, and then the fumbled snap. I mean, those three, you can't have those types of things. And those, without any of those three plays, that game would have been different. Without that pick to Amari Cooper, the Raiders wouldn't have scored a touchdown the other way. Without that missed field goal, missed extra point, the Browns could have kicked the field goal at the end, gone to overtime, and who knows what would have happened. Without that big 80-yard touchdown pass to Amari Cooper being called back, obviously the Browns would have had enough points to win that game. So a couple of bonehead plays really messed it up. But by and large, the team actually kind of did enough to win. But of course, those other units, as we talked about, held them back.
With the Deshaun Watson part, that breaks down to a couple different parts. So number one part statement is his best game. That's separate from the rest. So let's take that on its own. That I actually agree with. It is his best game. The Ravens game you could talk about when you really go back and look at it. Number one, it is a one-half performance.
Right, that's what I'm getting at.
But number two, he also didn't make a lot of really impressive throws. Go back and look at it. We were so starved for a good performance. Go back and look at it. There weren't a lot of impressive throws. It was a lot of just making good, sharp, 8-yard throws and running the ball and doing a couple things. But there wasn't a lot of there really wasn't a moment you was oh wow, that's a franchise quarterback throw. It didn't even, I don't remember me even having one in that game. So I do agree that it is his best game. Now, the second part of that statement is Patrick Mahomes is there, same game more or less. That I very much disagree. And there are a couple reasons why. And one of the biggest reasons why is where I think it gets deceptive is a guy like Deshaun, his limitations are not as much when he's playing well what he is doing so much as what he isn't doing. So a perfect example of this is and yeah, I don't want to get into the whole decision made, but I'm going to bring up Baker Mayfield for a minute because last week he got sacked 7 times and there was pressure all over the field. And it was okay, it's not really his fault. Yeah, it's a bad game, but he's getting sacked all the time. He had a 70-something% completion rate. Made all the right decisions, but that's how it went. This week, he goes for 350. He got the ball out in 2.2 seconds, I think was the average. Almost every ball came in under 2 seconds. And it's partly because they changed the offense, but partly because those are things he can do. He could process that quickly and get it out and still put up 350 yards. And that's just a perfect example just because that's someone who literally just had a back-to-back week example of pressure versus non-pressure. They had the same right tackle problem. The right tackle was out, and that's why they're getting all this pressure. Same guy was out this week as last week. Same problem, but they did something to adjust to it. Stefanski can't do that because I don't think Deshaun can process like that. So that's why I don't want to jump to, if someone else was there, you'd have the same conclusion. Sometimes you don't realize the decisions that could have been made that he passed on, that he's running around, and really there was a decision that he missed. So I'm not going to say that because I've seen too many times where he's missed opportunities. But it definitely was his best game, and definitely when he made decisions, they were the right decisions. Mm-hmm. Yes, he had Jerry Jeudy. I mean, he had that nice play. He did find a way to get to Cooper. He did find the guy that was open and make sure they could put up a ball that was catchable for the big play. Not his fault that one got called back. And overall, he made good decisions. Overall, he did mostly make good plays. I do personally feel, though we disagree on this, that on fourth down, you got to find a way in the last play of the game that it doesn't matter, that you just chuck it, and I don't care.
Yeah, that's where we disagree, because I felt like there was no time. You felt like if there was no time, you should have just chucked it up, and I was like, I just don't think there's time for that. I just feel like it's hindsight 2020. Like he saw, okay, I don't really have time to make a throw, so I'm going to try and escape and make a little bit of room, and he just couldn't. I didn't really feel like he had any time to process, but you're saying, hey, if you're noticing that, then you need to just chuck it into the middle there, and there's a fair point there. Maybe Patrick Mahomes or something that makes that throw, but really we don't really want to spend the whole time talking about Patrick Mahomes, but so yeah, maybe he does.
But that's the angle. But I think also we can't spend too much time with this quarterback or that quarterback. The contract's over. The contract is bad. Great. End of story. I think that's a discussion that's really been tabled. Now let's talk about what we have, because I don't want to go into every conversation with Deshaun saying, but he's not worth $230 million. Okay, yeah, we get that. But what do we have and what can we get? This is more or less the best Deshaun you're going to get. Making the right decisions when he makes them. And
agreed. I think this is peak.
Peak, yeah. And he's athletic, and he still has a good arm. So he can still make the plays. But he's going to need support. You're not going to walk in there without it. He's got some. He's got Jerry Jeudy. It's a great move. He's got some guys. The offense is better geared for him. He's going to need a better run game behind him, which hopefully with Chubb coming back, which we'll get into soon, great. That might very well fix that. And he needs the defense to be playing really well. And there were some fluke plays and some bad mistakes that led to interception and some weird flags that just kind of screwed things up. But yeah, this is probably the best version you're going to get. And if you can play like this, you might get the option of trading out of this contract at the end of the year. You probably have to eat a lot of it.
Yeah,
But if you could save $15 million in cap,
I don't know.
Might be worth it.
I don't know because, well, in order to make that move, you got to have a team on the receiving end. I don't know who that team really would be, honestly, but
Well, again, you wouldn't be trading and saying, here's the whole contract. You would be eating most of it.
right. And then maybe, but
What you could potentially do also is you could restructure the contract first, do a huge signing bonus, get rid of a lot of it, then eat a chunk of it.
yeah.
And then if that saves you after you eat a lot, you leave them 12, 15 million in cap, plus what you save on the signing bonus. If that's saving you 20, 25 million.
Yeah, I mean, the moral
makes
quandary aside of wanting to keep Deshaun Watson or not wanting to keep that aside, right, like for the off-the-field stuff, if he plays well enough that you're able to trade him, I think that means you should keep him because chances are you're not going to get anything better unless we're dealing with like a high draft pick. And like we're dealing with consistent games like this, right, where the team's losing because of other boneheaded stuff that's really kind of out of his control. We end up with a high draft pick. There's a quarterback they like, maybe, but in my mind, it's still better to just hold on to him and let the guy sit.
I highly disagree because Joe Flacco and Jacoby Brissett have looked better in this offense because they run a different offense. They're not running Stefanski's offense. They're making all these adjustments for him because he can't run Stefanski's offense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you end up with a different guy. You get to run Stefanski's offense, and it looks different.
Not just Sam Darnold in this offense might have honestly worked in retrospect, but that's really a hindsight is 2020 kind of thing. And we don't know how long that's really going to last with the Vikings. I don't really want to get into that. But
keep in mind with Darnold, everybody getting so excited. Great O-line, one of the best O-lines in the league. Great run game. Aaron Jones is there. Well, very good run game at least with Aaron Jones there. Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison catching balls. Kevin O'Connell's been one of the more underrated play callers in the league in a monstrous defense to make sure that everything is calm. And by the way, the moment the Packers he started to come back and he finally felt some heat for the first time this season, he started making mistakes. And he still threw for what, like less than 200 yards.
Yeah, no,
So,
I don't. Let's
not get too crazy about Darnold.
Yeah.
I think some people have been, mostly Colin Cowherd has just been so excited to finally see his boy do something.
That's because he liked him from before he was drafted. He was really into Sam Darnold from like Sam Darnold's freshman year. I remember him talking about Sam Darnold, thick, trunky. I remember you always saying that. Do you remember that?
Well, and the thing is, so many guys talk about people need help, and if quarterback, as a general vague concept of if quarterbacks have no help, they won't do well, and of course if quarterbacks have all the help, then a lot of guys can do better. Yet they don't seem to apply it. Jalen Hurts had one good year. When was that one good year? Best O-line in the league, best run game in the league, 2 great receivers, and one of the best defenses in the league. Sam Darnold's got everything around him, and nobody at any point is like, well, he's got a lot going for him. It's probably helping him look decent.
I think people just like the story, right?
And there's nothing wrong with that, but I just wish sometimes people would apply talent around and not around. It has a difference-making effect.
Apply that across the board, yeah.
And that's why I always said, when quarterbacks do badly and people say they don't have help, and I'll be like, no, they have some. I don't expect them to do very well, but I want flashes. Yeah. If they're not at least flashing and having some good moments, then I know there's only so much more that others will do for them, which is what I said about Hugh Jackson, right? When he went 131, he should have won 3 games. If you can't win 4 games, you're not going to win 10, 12 down the line no matter how much talent we give you.
Yeah. And we're not going to get to Hugh Jackson. He was such an excuse.
But that's just what I mean.
He was such an excuse maker. He never took responsibility for anything, so he definitely wasn't going to get better.
But you know what I mean?
He didn't even have a chance. But yes,
bars.
I do know what
you do with what you have.
Yeah, that's why like when people talk about Peyton Manning and like in his rookie season how he threw all those picks, like yes, but he also had a lot of flashes, which is why people didn't bail on him at that time, right? Like
I'm still a fan of the Browns making a trade for Sam Howell.
That's a conversation
for
later in the year. We'll see where we are later in the year. But speaking of conversations that we're delaying, this is a conversation that we delayed earlier in the year after the second game. People were talking about it a lot, and we said let's hold off till week 4 or 5. It's continued. Amari Cooper, what's going on with him? I mean, this guy's a veteran, and he's leading the league in drop balls. Amari Cooper, your number 1 wide receiver, Mr. Steady, it's basically what he's been his whole career because he's never been the guy to get like 1,600 yards. He just gets like 1,200 every single year, right? That's his thing. Now he's dropping balls. What's going on with him? Do you think he'll recover? Do you think we should trade him? What do we do with Amari Cooper? Because right now Jerry Jeudy's been a better receiver.
Yeah, 100%. Judy's been better, and it's scary because again, like I said in the past, he was kind of the engine of the offense. And part of the problem is he's had moments where he looks like old Amari Cooper, like that 80-yarder, which, again, didn't count, but it was his play, right? He gets just wide open.
Yeah.
And last week, right, he has moments where he'll look like Amari Cooper. The problem is one of the best parts of Amari Cooper was his reliability. He's not Mike Evans. Mike Evans, for example, is a guy, and I bring him up because he's known to drop balls. He will randomly just drop balls, and it makes you pull your hair out. But he gets away with it. Why? Because he's also the spectacular beast of athleticism who just pulls things out of nowhere, and he just these crazy things.
He also catches like 90-10 balls. You know what I mean? Like not 50-50s. He catches like 90-10s.
That's what I mean.
So, yeah.
He has these phenomenal balls. He just goes out there and does things. And he'll just get like breaking wide open 90 yards on field, just burn people. He does crazy things. So it's been let go. For Cooper, though, a lot of what he did was his reliability. So when you're dropping balls, that hurts.
Yeah.
Big time. It hurts everyone, but for Amari Cooper, it really hurts. He's been getting so much money. He's been that guy. But now it feels like, he's not really that guy anymore. Maybe we'll see, but you normally don't just see this many drops and then just stops. He is 30.
I was going to say, do you remember how old he is? I can't remember.
He's 30.
I know it was 30 at least. I don't know if it was 30.
Some guys, when they hit 30, they just tank. And we kind of got lost in this era of guys who were playing way past their primes. But that doesn't always happen. And especially with quarterbacks, we kind of got lost on age because we had these quarterbacks that were playing at 38.
Yeah.
It's like not normal.
Drew Brees, Tom Brady,
Peyton Manning,
even
Aaron Rodgers,
was so good at 38. 39 he dropped off.
He was still really good, 38. Peyton Manning up until 39, he was really good at 38.
Yeah, but those were really anomalies. I mean, we'll see what happens
Ben was still
now.
good
but
till his late 30s, to 37 or so.
There's no good quarterback in the league who's 35 right now.
How old is Stafford? I
I
think he's like 34. But he's close, and he is good. But yeah, I get what you mean. Although Joe Flacco, he did win the game, but he did slow down a lot in the second half over there. But I don't know if you can trade him because receivers haven't been going for a lot lately in the trade market.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what do we got Amari Cooper for, like a fifth round pick? Yeah, like, what are you going to get him for now that he's 30?
Is it worth trading the guy if he's a sixth round pick? I don't feel like it is because he's only on contract till the end of the year. So it's like,
I actually
ride
think
it out and see if he has good moments, right?
I think it's more likely that Amari Cooper gets waived than it is for him to get traded.
But I don't see that happening till the end of the year.
I think it's like...
he still has good moments.
Not high, but I think it's like 55, 45. Like I'm saying if he were to be off the team, right? I think it's like 55% he gets waived, like 45% he gets traded. Because not likelihood if they tried to trade him, the best they could get is like a 6 or a 7.
But if you move on from him, okay, Jerry Jeudy, more is good. But then after that, it's very iffy. And I feel like Amari Cooper still gives you a lot more value than Cedric Tillman.
Yeah, I mean, you may as well hold on and hope things come around.
Unless someone surprises you and is like, we think we can make a push with him, we'll give you a third-round pick. In which case, you know what? Take your third-round pick. Otherwise, I think it just doesn't. You don't get the value back to make sense.
I agree. I don't think it's the right move as far as what you've seen from him, though. So we're both in agreement. Trading him is not really the right decision. We don't think. But do you think he's gonna get back to where he was before? Do you think that maybe this is just the new normal for Amari? Do you think he steadies at something like a number 2 level receiver? What's going on?
I think you may see some more big moments. Like he may get back to he does like again. There was a big moment for him this week. And there was some last week. So you may see him get back to that. And okay, he can get open sometimes and make those big moments. But I don't know that the drops are going away. It's never been a thing in his career, and it's suddenly dogging him. I'm not sure that's going away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I can't see drops just going away. Like drops don't typically just go away unless it's a young guy who has a concentration issue. He's not. So I don't have any reason to believe that he's not. And I think the new normal for him is like age caught up a little bit, and he's having some issues, and it might just be that he's had to think about other things more because of his age. Like he's not able to do things how he used to, and because of the overemphasis, his concentration isn't the same in the catch game.
Do you remember like Odell Beckham when he was on the team? He was just suddenly dropping balls.
Yeah,
and we couldn't figure out what was going on, and we were kind of hypothesizing that there's too much going on with him in his brain. There's too much other stuff going on, and he's losing the focus. Right? How does the off the field affect that? It's like this. The receiver, the ball's coming out, and the receiver wants to make a big play, right? And every time they get the ball, they're not thinking about, let me catch this ball and then turn upfield. They're thinking like 2 steps ahead of that. They don't have that same focus. Their mind's all over the place when that ball comes out. Maybe they're thinking too much about the defender coming in. Hey, am I about to get the hit that ends my career, right? What's that angle that guy's coming in at? Ooh, that guy's a little fast, right? There's all those things coming on, and a more focused receiver is thinking just about make this catch. And I think that's probably what we're seeing from Amari Cooper. I want to say that I think he'll probably have 2 or 3 more drops for the rest of the year. I don't think it's really going to exceed 3 from here on out. I think he is going to get it under control, but his production, this might be it for his production. He might just have like pop off here or there for a game, but he might be more like a number 2 wide receiver right now, and the Browns might do well to start drawing up plays and scheme with that in mind. But we'll leave that for there. We'll see what happens next week, and we'll reevaluate and start talking about that if we get to that point. Let's talk about the Brownie Points. Let's get into our Brownie Points segment. Again, if you're a first-time listener, and you did listen to the intro, I can't believe anyone would do that, but some people don't. If you're a first-time listener, the Brownie Points segment is where basically we give out our awards to the standout players on offense, to the standout players on defense. We call our awards Brownie Points. We get you 3 Brownie Points if you had the best performance, 2 Brownie Points, and then 1 Brownie Point. And again, we do that for offense, and we do that for defense. We don't just give it to 3 Brownie Points to the best player. Like 3 Brownie Points is a great performance. If nobody had a great performance, nobody gets 3 Brownie Points. Now, today, I happen to feel that Deshaun Watson is worthy of 3 Brownie Points for all those reasons that I got into earlier on at the beginning of this episode. So I'm not going to get all into that now because, again, I already did that. But I do feel like Deshaun Watson had a great game. I think he was undermined by a lot of other factors that were out of his control, but I feel like he did everything he could. In my mind, he's worthy of 3 Brownie Points. I don't have anybody at 2 Brownie Points. And then I think at 1 Brownie Point, I have Jerry Jeudy. He had a pretty good game. That drop at the end was kind of not his fault. I mean, it would be great if he could have held on to it, but the way the defender came in, like most receivers are going to drop that ball. So, but overall, he played well. He's been playing well this year. He surprised me, I think, with his level of play. So I'm pretty happy with that. Who do you have for your offensive Brownie Points?
Yeah, so it's very similar. I just have Watson at 2. I still thought he had his best game, and he did get, some unfortunate things happen that weren't his fault. So I would put him at 2, just not 3. And I would give 1 to Jerry Jeudy. I mean, he had a good game. I do think part of the reason he's been a little better here is he's very good at the slant game. And that's a specific type of thing, which in this offense is played a lot more than some other offenses.
Sure. And
so it's played to his strength, which, hey, all's well that ends well, as long as he's playing well. I'm not complaining about it, just making an observation about why I think he's doing better here than Denver.
Yeah.
And that's worked out well for him, and that's been great, and it's been nice to see, and a little bit of breath of relief because we gave him a lot of money. And honestly, if you told me I'm getting similar production, I had to have one of them play well, Jerry Jeudy or Amari Cooper, it's Jerry Jeudy. He's the one we're locked up in. Cooper not next year. So
he's younger. So
that's what he's the one we need to be playing well.
Yeah, like Amari, we knew he was going to drop off. If not this year, then sometime over the next couple of years. Like we knew, the clock is ticking for him, but for Jerry Jeudy. So yeah, I agree with that. How about defense?
I do want to throw an honorable mention on offense. I do think Stefanski just in general has adjusted the offense nicely to be really something that he doesn't like to do, but he's made nice adjustments to make sure it's much more comfortable for him.
Okay, interesting.
And, so I just think it's worth a mention.
I heard on the radio in my car, like on my ride over, that they were talking about is Kevin Stefanski in the hot seat, which I think is first of all ridiculous, but it's funny because you're like, actually, I think he deserves a little bit of credit
I think
there.
When you give him a guy who's such a different quarterback than what he wants to do, that his skill set's so different, and he mostly actually adapts to it, I think that's worthy of praise, personally.
No, I don't think Kevin Stefanski should be anywhere near the hot seat. I mean, I think that would be a really, really dumb decision unless they convince themselves that because they have Mike Vrabel on the team. And Mike Vrabel, we know, is a very competent head coach. But in my opinion, it was kind of like the same thing as what Kevin Stefanski is doing, right? I mean, it's like not really beyond that first playoff game, but getting to that first playoff game. But whatever, we're not going to get into that. Again, that's a conversation for later in the year. If this team's like 3-10 or something, we'll start talking about coaching changes or whatever. But for now, who do you got for your defensive Brownie Points?
I just got 1 for Myles Garrett. He got 2 sacks. I didn't think he actually had such a great game for a 2-sack game, but he had 2 sacks. And it does take effort. And ultimately, sacking quarterback in the NFL is hard to do.
He had a few pressures, too, where he got in there and
if you do it twice,
a little quicker.
You deserve something.
Sure.
You deserve a nod and everything. JOK had some good moments, but I'm not going to give him one because I saw him whiff a few times.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to hold that definitely one against him this time.
He went to, as the young people would say, he went for like the hit stick on a lot of those plays, and a lot of them went really well. I could tell you're looking at me. I don't know if you even know what I'm talking about, but
yeah.
Okay, you do. Okay.
Hit stick
I don't know if you were looking at me because you didn't know, or if you were looking at me because you were like, "Why are you even saying that?" But for JOK, he went in like 100 miles an hour and went for like the big shoulder tackle that looks really good when you knock them over, and a couple of them were whiffs. I felt like there were enough big plays to counteract that, so I still have JOK at 1 Brownie Point, and then at 2 Brownie Points I have Myles Garrett again. He had a couple sacks, and then he also had a few pressures that was really nice. It's really the only standout on that defensive line at all. Everybody else was putrid.
Defensive tackles were the worst. They ran on us. The Raiders.
Yeah.
And I will also say for JOK, though, he does have to learn how to grab a jersey. Because, look, if you don't always tackle them, you got to at least make sure you're grabbing jersey so they have to reset their feet and allows the defense to rally to the ball so they don't get such easy big plays.
Maybe he's too safe. He feels too safe with his Guardians cap because he's diving in. Instead of like, grab him with your arms.
It's like that 4-year-old who puts on the superhero cape and they're
Yeah.
like, now I can do anything.
I know. No, I'm being like almost serious. Like I wonder because I mean it's gonna affect your psyche to some degree, right? Doesn't mean it'll affect it in any way necessarily in the football field. You know, that'll manifest in positive or negative performance, but it will likely has some effect. Anyways, that's kind of getting into the weeds on that one. Let's shift to next week. Okay, we talked a lot about this past week. Let's shift to next week. A lot of people coming to this Raiders game, we did not think so, but a lot of people were saying, is that a must-win game? I think that's ridiculous. I don't know how you feel about that, but I think calling the Raiders game a must-win game is ridiculous. Must-win means you must win, not we really want to win or be really, really good if we win this game. That's not what a must-win is. A must-win is a must-win, meaning if you don't win that game, your season's over, either literally or basically. Right? In the situation, I think this is a must-win game. I think if the Browns are 1-3 right now, if the Browns go 1-4, I think the season is over. I think you could kiss the playoffs goodbye. If the Browns win this game, I think there's still a chance to come back, win enough games, get into the playoffs, and can still have whatever aspirations that we had before the season even started. But if they lose this game, I do think this season, so I think that's over. I think we start looking to the draft, and do we still want to have Deshaun Watson around next year? And we start to really think about those things. But either way, I think the playoffs is goodbye if they lose this. So I do think it is a must-win game. So I want to hear from you. Do you agree that it's a must-win game? And then tell me about what you think is actually going to happen in that game when they win and what your score prediction is.
So one quick thing I will say about the Raiders game. It was not a must-win, but I do think people will call it that because in their heads it is because of the fact that Adams and Crosby are out. And it just feels like, okay, well, if you're not going to win that game, how many are you going to win?
Right.
So
if you don't win
like
that, then what are you going to do? Right. Exactly.
Yeah, so it's more of like a talent of like, okay, well, if you're not, then you're just not going to make the playoffs anyway. But in a technical aspect, no, it's not a must-win. But yeah, I would say this week is. I mean, at a certain point, yeah. But now you're 1-3. Going 1-4 is when you kind of you're just done.
Yeah,
I mean,
if you turn that season around, you're starting to talk about historic levels of turning
Ravens
it around.
are turning up
so
the heat.
We're not.
The Steelers are 3-1. The Ravens are turning up the heat. You can't just keep doing this and thinking you're coming back. And on top of that, this is a team. You want to make the playoffs as a team you got to beat. It's not the easiest team, but it's a team you got to beat if you want to make the playoffs. They can be slowed down on offense. The Giants did it. They didn't score a touchdown against the Giants. They did put up 18 points miraculously, but they didn't score a touchdown. The Buccaneers shut them down too. Then they went on against the Cardinals defense and the Bengals defense, who are both mad, and destroyed them. But they do have some real talent. What makes me nervous is we haven't always done so well with guys who are very, very athletic and keeping contained.
Yeah, I also worried about Brian Robinson.
Yeah, I'm very worried about Brian Robinson.
Because he's been pretty strong, and
he's a good running
defensive
back.
line has not been strong at all.
He's been one of the strongest running backs that nobody's talked about. Because there hasn't been many strong
very
running
underrated
backs.
right now, yeah.
And when he's actually been strong, and nobody talks about him, mainly because it's Washington.
Yeah, especially it's helped him also, playing off Jaden Daniels a little bit, but
he played well last year.
Good. No, yeah, he's good.
Been
he's a good player.
Back
no, he's a good player.
People just haven't really talked about.
He's underrated
because Washington is terrible. But but he isn't good enough that it's like you can't ignore him.
Yeah,
but he's good. And the way the Raiders ran on us up the middle, I am worried about him. As far as Jaden Daniels, I think if you use JOK as a spy, you can limit him because JOK is quick enough that he can give him problems. And Jaden Daniels not big and strong; he is a little wiry, so he should be able to take him down.
Yeah,
you just need the speed, which JOK has. So on that aspect, I feel a little, I feel pretty good as long as we make the adjustments. We haven't always made the adjustments. We've sometimes been a team that's like, we're going to do what we want to do, which is stupid, but we still seem to do it sometimes. So,
especially defensively.
Yes, but we have been used to playing Lamar. So we are used to playing guys like him and have actually done a pretty good defensive job. So if you just moderate that playbook with a little more for the downfield passing, because he's a better downfield passer than Lamar is, Jaden Daniels. But he doesn't do it a ton. He's still inconsistent with it, honestly. So I don't know if he's better. Hard to say. At moments he is.
Well,
he
so the jury remains to be
balls
seen.
The way Lamar does.
You'd think you could play them in a similar way that you played Lamar.
But he's got some zip. Yeah, but it's certainly similar. And so you do have that. So that's a big advantage. An AFC North team who's used to playing Lamar twice a year, playing against Jaden Daniels, they have an advantage. Their defense is terrible. This is actually really must for the offense. Especially if Nick Chubb is back, which is where our hope is. If Nick Chubb comes back and he can really give you that oomph, that force the defense to focus on the run, that opens up the pass game, and gets a very weak secondary for the Commanders. They have a very weak defense. That's really your opportunity zone. And if you can get used to playing like the way you do against Lamar, if you can come up with the right game plan and limit him, then hopefully you can put up the offensive performance that will get you the win. And hopefully, if they can take them out of comfort zone, because they played in comfort zone offense the last 2 weeks, they've been doing a lot of easy plays and just take what's there. If you force them out of comfort zone, I believe you will then see Jaden Daniels make mistakes. Mm-hmm. So that's really what it's about. It's an opportunity. It's also really tough. At the same time, seeing a rookie play really well makes you also wonder when the other shoe's going to drop for a couple weeks.
Yeah, because typically that does happen, right? Once the teams start to get more tape on you, they start to plan for you a little bit more. Not that they were never planning for me as the quarterback, but a little bit more and more effectively. Usually there's some kind of a drop-off, right?
And the way this defense is, I think, just going to make it relatively easy for our offense to do what they need to do, especially because I do think, Chubb will be back. And with that, just giving yourself with him providing that engine, and then you'll just have some easy offense. And because of that, I actually think the Browns are going to surprise them. I do think they're going to win. I'm thinking 24-17.
Okay, really, 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 really close prediction. My prediction is 23-17. Our predictions were really off like most of the year, and then we didn't get the score right, but we were right about the score. It's basically impossible to get that thing right, but we were right about the Browns. Unfortunately, we were right about the Browns losing to the Raiders. Both of us now have them predicting them to win this game against the Commanders. I almost said their whole team name against the Commanders, so we'll see what happens. Hopefully this time I actually hope that we're right. You said 24-17. I had them at 23-17. I think we're predicting similar things. I think Jaden Daniels is a little too dynamic. They're probably going to get a playoff here or there, but for the most part, I think they're going to be relatively contained. The Browns will have some struggles, but the Washington Commanders defense is also trash, so I think they'll be able to break through enough. 23-17, nothing crazy, but to get the job done, to come out with a win, and hopefully with a little bit more belief that they could turn the season around.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And with that, we're going to wrap up our episode. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.